You have recently written a book on successful blogging, and as I said, you've got a fantastic site. And many authors know that they have to have a blog and they have to do this stuff, but they might not be getting any traffic. They might not feel their blog's very good. So I wondered if you would give us your top three tips from your book of what people can do to have a better blog.
Okay, well, I think it's really important to make sure your blog looks good. I know everyone says content is king, and of course, what you write on your blog is really important.
Mm.
But there's so many blogs that I go to visit that you just take one look at them and you leave straight away,
Mm.
because the first impression is so bad. So I think it's really important to spend time making sure people have a good first impression when they first visit your site. There's a few things which a lot of people make mistakes on, like making the column width too long so that it's unreadable for people. And people won't look at your website and think, oh, it's too hard to read, I'm going. But subconsciously, they'll be struggling to find the information that they're looking for. Maybe they don't know what the blog's about, and they'll give up. So making sure your website's clean and simple with a good first impression is really crucial. The second tip I'd give people is to just not worry about your stats to begin with. No one really is going to visit your website for the first 6 months, probably for the first year. So you need to just accept that and see it as a long-term project. If you're a writer, you obviously love writing, so I would use your blog as an excuse to practice your writing, to experiment and have fun. And I'd maybe concentrate on trying to get comments coming in to begin with. Not worry about stats, but try and get together with a blogging buddy and leave comments on their blog and ask them to leave your comments on your blog so that it looks as if people are reading your blog, because that'll encourage other people to leave comments. And the third tip then is, that's a hard one, first impression, persevering, and probably just, coming up with topics that people are really going to be interested in reading. Mm. I think it's quite difficult for fiction authors to know what to write about. A lot of the most successful blogs tend to be giving people information. Mm. And maybe that's something that fiction writers can do as well, is kind of to share their story about how they've evolved into becoming a writer and give people a few tips, because I think people do want that information. And if you can come up with headlines that people are going to really want to find out more about, that's going to really help you in your blog.
No, there's some really great things there. And I actually want to come back on what you said before about where you started, back on a free blog and then moving things over, because I meet a lot of authors who have a Blogspot or a WordPress.com free blog, and they want to turn it into a more professional looking site. So, from your experience, what is the best way to take, someone who already has a little blog and make it into a better blog?
Well, I would recommend that people use WordPress. I'm working with an author at the moment who's got her blog on Blogspot, and she's got her own domain name, but we're going to try and change it over to WordPress, just because there's so much more you can do with WordPress. Having your blog hosted on your own domain name is going to allow you to do whatever you want with it, basically, whereas if you're just on WordPress or Blogspot, you're stuck with those templates, and a lot of the templates are actually set up so that they're hard to read. A lot of them have the column width that's too long, for example, so there's not much you can do about that unless you set up your blog properly. And if you're a professional writer or you want to make a career out of writing, I think it's really worthwhile investing a bit of time in graphic design so that your blog looks good. I think people should look at spending around $2,000 just to have a really professional looking blog, because it's not enough anymore to have a blog. There's a few writers around like Seth Godin and Penelope Trunk who don't have their own domain name. They just have their blogs on Blogspot or Typepad. But I don't think that's going to cut the mustard anymore. No. You've got to have your own domain name, and I'd recommend WordPress.
No, that's excellent. I guess, there I also, you mentioned a bit about topics, and it's important to be, I guess, passionate about your topic, isn't it? Because so many blogs fail because of you know, lack of posting often because people run out of ideas. So, funnily enough, one of the biggest questions I get is, well, how do I know what my passion is in order to find the right blog topic? Do you have any tips on that?
Yes, I do. It's interesting because I've got a blog post on my blog which a friend told me to write. It's called "What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do with Your Life." And it's such a common problem for people not to really know what their passion is. But I think blogging is a great way to find out what your passion is. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, I'd like to do a blog, but I don't know what I should write about. And my advice is just get started. Stop now worrying about everything I've told you about the column width. Just write. Just promise yourself you're going to write twice a week on your blog and see what happens. Almost every blogger I know has started blogging on one topic and switched to another topic later on. And I think you can see that that's what they've done. When I set up my blog, I told you I'd moved from New Zealand to Costa Rica and then Australia. So originally it was set up to help people move overseas or travel, because I knew a lot of people dream of that. And obviously I know a lot about it. I've lived in, 10 countries, maybe more. And after I wrote about that, and I had quite a good blog going. It was building up in the numbers. I had a lot of readers, or a few readers anyway, to begin with. And after about 6 months, I just got bored of it, Joanna. I was hanging around a lot in forums called Poms in Oz, for example. And I know British people who move to Australia have a real reputation for whinging and whining. Just in case anyone doesn't know, they call them whinging Poms. There were so many whinging Poms on these forums. I thought, oh, this isn't me, you know. So I kind of changed topic, and I started writing more about generally living your dream and achieving what you want out of life, succeeding in whatever it was you wanted. And then after that, it became obvious people were really interested in my experience in web design and web copywriting, because so many people want to work for themselves or work online or work from home. So that's become a strong focus on my blog. So partly it's been led by my interest changing, and partly by what the readers wanted as well.
No, that's great advice. Now, you know, you've been blogging for a number of years, but you also went to Blog World earlier this year to meet some of the biggest bloggers who've been blogging for, you know, over 5 years, I guess. They're the, you know, some old school bloggers. So I know you've written a lot about this on your blog, but can you give us some of your biggest learnings from Blog World?
Well, it's amazing to be able to go to something like that and meet all those people who you've read about. There are some huge bloggers there who really are heroes of mine, like Leo Babauta, and it's great to meet people like that. I suppose any author, it would be exciting to read them if you've read their stuff. And I think that the biggest tip is people say, you know, you've been talking about your passion, and talking about sincerity, I think, is very important. And you can see that when you meet Leo Babauta, he's just kind of really into the whole simple minimalist message of what he writes about. He's actually living that. He's not doing it for the money, and I think that's part of the reason for his success, definitely. Yeah. The unfortunate thing is a lot of people do start blogging because they want to make money, and one of the things that I think it was Brian Clark, from Coffee Blogger, mentioned during one of his talks was that you have to actually focus on the money if that's the case, because blogging doesn't make you money. You need to know why you're doing it. If you want to make money out of it, you need to work out how you're actually going to make money out of it. For writers, obviously, I think part of it's about building a profile, building a readership. A lot of writers I know use it to build confidence in their writing, and I think that's a really good idea. And it's also a brilliant way to practice your writing, because if you write every day or even every week, then your writing's definitely going to improve. And it's really great to have a blog and be able to get feedback from your readers. And we're very privileged as bloggers to be able to get that, because the typical journalist who writes for a newspaper or magazine just doesn't get the kind of input from their readers that we bloggers get.
And I guess, you know, from that, it's a lot about community, isn't it, as well? Blogging, once you are a blogger, you know, you can network with other bloggers like we're doing, and there really is a sense of community, isn't there?
Yes, it's amazing actually. I've met people. I didn't start my blog or get on Twitter to meet people at all, but it's become an amazing facet of my life. Basically, all the relationships I've made with people, and I've met people locally. I've met people in the States, and I've actually gone on to meet them in person or talk to them on Skype. And one tip, because I know that your blog specifically for writers, is that I've been able to connect on Twitter with some really well-known and best-selling writers. John Birmingham, I know he's local to you, and he lives in Australia. Then there's Peter Moore, who's an Australian travel writer who lives in London. And recently I just sent a tweet about Alexander McCall Smith, who's the author of the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. And it was literally just a tweet, but he emailed me. So he must have gone to visit my blog and then sent me an email, and we corresponded by email. And that's, I know that sounds really kind of pathetic, but it's actually really good to have these authors as your contacts, because I can keep in contact with those guys now. Maybe if I ever get around to finishing a book, I could send it to them and say, hey, do you think your agent would look at this? Could you give me any hints? Maybe if I got something published, they might read it and write the little blurb on the back cover. So it's a good thing to do. I'd recommend that to people. And it's also fun to get in touch with your heroes, and that motivates you, I think.
No, that's brilliant. And I guess that comes from profile and, building something up before you approach people. That's pretty important as well, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's why it's so important that first impression is a good one, because I've met people on Twitter before, and then I thought, I'm getting on really well with them, and I'll go and have a look at their blog, and I'll be so disappointed by what I see. But because I've already been building a bit of a relationship with them on Twitter, I know they're interesting, I know they're fun, and I overlook that. But if my first contact had been through the blog, we probably wouldn't have gone anywhere at all. So it's very important to make sure your blog looks good.